Hi, Pastor Nathan Deck with your hashtag Better Together devotion for today. And this week I'm focusing on what the church should offer as opposed to what we often offer. Now, oftentimes, if we're talking about church, one of the things the church often offers is Sunday school. We sit people down at desks or at tables around. We might have coffee, we might have donuts, we might have danishes, and we'll all open our Bibles and someone will lecture to us. Or we might have discussions and things like that. And this is the old model of small groups. Now, I've shared with you, there was an advertisement one time that Group did that said something to the effect of, Jesus didn't make disciples this way. Why do we? But Jesus did make disciples through small group ministries. We have wonderful numbers and statistical figures, actually, from the Bible that lead us to understand how Jesus went about creating small groups. Because even when the 5,000 gathered, he got them to divide themselves up into small groups and small gatherings. Jesus took 5,000 and out of that 5,000 gathered them into small groups so that they should be disciples. And so there was this group that followed Jesus throughout his ministry that's just collectively called the disciples. And then out of that disciples group, you have the 12. There were 12 people that Jesus picked together. This is a good small group. One of the things I've learned as a pastor is that if you get a group of people and it grows beyond 12 people, no matter how wonderful the group still continues to be, if it grows beyond 12, well, it's really easy for somebody to no longer participate, or it's really easy for somebody to no longer feel like they're as important or as included. 12 is a good number. Jesus was on to something with that. And out of that 12, Jesus even created smaller groups. There were 3, Peter, James, and John, who went with Jesus specifically to other people, and the 4 of them had things that happened around them. Jesus, Peter, James, and John that were wonderful. An even smaller, tighter-knit group. This is the kind of discipleship, this is the kind of growth that the church should offer. We should take the masses, the big, huge numbers that gather on Sunday morning, and really understand that worship is not the primary way we make disciples. Instead, it's through our small gatherings, our small groups. These small groups that gather together out of that mass into being disciples, into being the 12 gathered, into being the small group of folks who care for one another and who experience God with one another. There's a reason that today is the first wonderful big topic of this week, and I'm not talking about worship, I'm talking about small groups, because I believe one of the things that the pandemic pause, the great pause that we all experienced, taught us was that we longed for the big show, we longed for that wonderful big gathering. But what we really truly needed was small group gatherings. The churches I've noticed that thrived during the Great Pause are the ones who were connecting collectively with one another only through these different small groups. And through these small group ministries, they stayed connected, they stayed on track, they stayed as disciples of Jesus. We need to focus our ministry strongly towards making disciples. The church should offer discipleship through gathering groups of people into small groups so that they can get closer to God and closer to one another today. Amen.